Mark, I guess one of the last questions while I have you, predictions for the coming year. This is the first show that you've been on for this year, the first Monday of the year. Um, you sent me a clip of I forget the person who's on there, but
Maloney. It was the
Maloney,
Italian
right.
Prime Minister Maloney. Yes,
Yeah.
she said that she was addressing her own country's parliament in the end of the year address, and she said that I understand 2025 was bad for all of us, but don't worry, 2026 will be even worse. And I sensed that to you, and I meant it when I sent it. It wasn't just humor, because we're going to see escalation everywhere. We're going to see further such regime change attempts. Absolutely, certainly. Iran, Israel is blowing the horns. I mean, go on Twitter and make a post about Iran and Israel and see how quickly the bots line up to attack anything you say on it right now. Israel is in drive to war mode. Netanyahu was just in the U.S. last week, and U.S. Military cargo aircraft are boom, boom, boom to Europe and then on to the Middle East on their way right now. And Trump appears to be all behind it again, at least from the rhetoric. He's going to defend the Iranian Mossad insurgents, and let's dispense with the protester word here because they're already armed with AK-47s and the like, right? You know, there's always they'll always exploit the situation. Yes, the Iranian currency has been crashed, and there are people who are economically discontented, but even before the protests started, it was already weaponized, right, and taken over by an active, militarization of this by Mossad, as they always do. And Israel is pushing so hard for war against Iran round 2 right now. I don't know why. I mean, they must. Again, they had their greatest success the first time around with Mossad, right, rather than the actual airstrikes. And I expect that they believe that they can win that way again. What they have in their sleeves that they haven't revealed so far, I don't know. But ultimately, there are some things that haven't changed. The U.S. and Israel have not been able to significantly restock their air defense interceptors in the last few months, right? U.S. production rates are too low. Israeli production rates are too low. Right? They don't even have them for Ukraine at this point. Whatever they do, Iran is going to have far more missiles, far more, than they can. So that means that if they're attempting to reignite it, they believe that they can win it in terms other than the long-range strike war of attrition that the first one had devolved into. They have something else, and almost certainly Mossad is at the forefront of it. Right? Mossad thinks they've got a hidden card that they can regime change Iran with again, right? Some variation of what happened in Syria and Venezuela, certainly, but probably a little bit more kinetic, a little more violent than what occurred in both of those places. But almost certainly because they can't believe they can win a long-range strike war of attrition with Iran. Again, nothing has changed fundamentally since then, right? When they had to quit that war because Israel was starting to get pounded even harder in return. So that means there must be something else that they have that they are so eager to go to drive the U.S. to war with them again on. And that means Mossad. That means Mossad. That's what Mossad, again, can pull this time that they haven't pulled before, I don't know. But they think they have something.
On the Ukraine front, any expectation of breakthrough, any expectation of collapse?
Okay,
I know you don't like that word.
Please, let's stop with the collapse, right? Not, at least for the foreseeable future, right? There's not going to be a military collapse where the Ukrainian military, says, "Oh, we can't fight anymore. Let's sign surrender papers." That's not going to happen, at least not anytime in the foreseeable future, right? The next year is certainly going to be a year of continued war, of continued forced conscription. Budanov, the military intelligence chief, the one principally responsible for the dirty war, has now been made the chief of staff,
right?
Possibly being arranged as a potential successor for the U.S. to Zelensky in its entirety, and then there's no choice. And like with the former defense minister of
I'm sorry, that was chief of staff. I'm sorry.
Like the former defense minister, Budanov is a Banderite, right? He is a committed anti-Russian fascist ideologue. So that does not bode well, right? And whatever success Russia is having, the Kiev regime is still obviously capable of pushback, as we've seen in Kupiansk, as we've seen attempts at in the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd direction, launching counterattacks after counterattacks. They're wasteful and exhaustive, and they've had no success in the Pokrovsk area, maybe slowed Russian advance down a little. In the Kupiansk, mixed, and there's a lot of fog of war yet, but almost certainly they haven't taken back all of Kupiansk like they've claimed, although they've done better there, it must be said. That is a sign that we're not at a collapse moment yet, and probably not for the foreseeable future. I think we are more likely, it is a greater percentage likelihood of a political or economic collapse than there is of a military collapse. Crumbling, yes, right? Localized crumbling, that we'll see. We could see breakthroughs. We're still seeing one in the south, in Zaporozhye, east and west, right? Both directions there. We could see another breakthrough in Sumy, all right? Because the Kiev regime took troops from Sumy, moved them to Kupiansk, and now Russia has reactivated the Sumy front. That would, if they advance there, if they take Sumy, then that is another threat to Kiev itself, and that would force the Kiev regime to pull back from other areas. But again, don't expect a big C collapse. Not yet. I mean, there are people who have been predicting that every 2 months since the beginning of this conflict, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
Just not yet. We're not there yet. Okay. Crumbling, yes. Collapse, no. Probably by autumn, Russia will have all of Donbass more or less under control. But I was the most cautious of all Russian, in the alt media sphere in terms of military predictions. And by my own count, the Russian military is 8 months behind where I predicted they would be at the beginning of this year.
So it's much slower than expectations.
Yeah, I thought they would be moving on Slavyansk and Kramatorsk already by the end of this year, and that won't be until the spring, right? While Russia is still over 50% supposedly of Konstantinovka and Liman, they aren't taken yet, right? And I thought they would be by New Year's, right? And there's still fight there. Probably another couple of months of fight, at least, in both of those places. On the other hand, we did get Seversk, we did get Pokrovsk, we finished off Mirnograd at the end, and Gulai Polya was unexpected. That I did not foresee, but that fell rather quickly. So that shows there can still be breakthrough moments, but then there is slowing down and a kind of stabilization by the Kiev regime. But they keep withdrawing troops from here and there. There will be new conscription this year of a certainty, a total conscription, almost certainly. Women may even be involved. But the regime is not going to give up. And the U.S., the CIA, as we've seen, is only going to escalate this thing, and all of this belief that Trump is ending his involvement. He just thinks he's doing it with a greater degree of deniability now. But that's hard to do when even the New York Times is trumpeting about what he's doing.
I'm curious if Iran does attack Iran this time around.
Israel does attack.
I'm sorry, Israel. If Israel does attack Iran this time around, what do you see with the first time around? Putin came out and effectively said the Iranians didn't want the Russians involved.
Yeah.
That, Putin was getting a huge amount of heat on this idea of assisting Iran. And he seemed very annoyed by people pointing out, hey, you don't seem to be sticking by your friends, in which case he pointed out they didn't want my help. I tried to have a military agreement with them. They didn't want it. Do you think that remains true this time around or not so much?
There seems to be some indication that Iran has been more willing to accept Russian help with air defense and electronic warfare this time around. And we don't have 100% guarantee on that. Iran is politically self-independent and prickly on their sovereignty in that regard. Iran is not a dictatorship, however it is presented, and there are still plenty of Iranian political elite that frankly don't like Russia.
Yeah.
And don't want to be dependent on them or on China. So I expect that some assistance has been given to Iran, and more like intelligence, C4ISR will be given in round 2. But ultimately, not enough time has passed to build Iran the type of air defense and electronic warfare shield that Russia has to such great effect in this conflict with the United States over Ukraine. That would take years to build. So what Russia could do in a few months is limited. But again, do not expect to see Russian troops or aircraft or Chinese troops or aircraft or anything. That's not going to happen. Right? Russia will just it is far more effective for Russia to apply that force to the U.S. proxy state in Kiev. And China, we've seen this giant war game blockade of Taiwan. Does that mean if Iran was pressed to the point of collapse, it would be more militarily effective? I'm not saying they're going to do that, but in defense of Iran, it would be more militarily effective for China to launch an attempt to regain control of that separatist island backed by the U.S. than it would be to send troops or equipment to defend Iran itself. That's just the location, the far-flung location of these allies and their amount of military interoperability, which is still, limited, and geography is a big part of that. So again, it would be far more effective for Russia to provide intelligence, maybe last minute, some air defense interceptors, that sort of thing, right? But, do not expect to see the Russian Air Force or Russian troops on the ground in Iran or Chinese or anything like that. That's outside the realm of possibility.
I guess the last question, do you see conflict, tensions between Israel and Turkey? I mean, at this point, they're effectively balkanizing Syria.
Turkey has with Syria. No, I mean, Syria has rolled down and played dead. In fact, I had put a clip on my Week in Review last week. A Turkish foreign minister was in Syria, right, in the new Al-Qaeda caliphate in Syria, making a statement at a presser, right, on stage. And he began talking about Israel and Palestine. And his mic was cut off by the new pro-Israel Al-Qaeda caliphate in Syria. And he stood there awkwardly for a moment. The look on his face is absolutely priceless. Erdogan is supposed to be the master of this Al-Qaeda statelet in Syria. But they already feel confident enough by their support from Israel and the United States that they're willing to cut the mic off of the Turkish foreign minister as he's, talking. What is, again, ultimately rhetoric, because Turkey has never done anything against Israel and is never going to do. But they wouldn't even allow that rhetoric to be publicly voiced in their caliphate now.
And I guess the last question, what do you think will be unexpected this year? And I know this is somewhat difficult to answer because it's like, tell me something that you don't know. But what do you think?
Insurgency in Syria, right? The Alawites on one side and the Kurds, less and less backed by the United States in the east of the country. We're starting to see clashes more and more with the Al-Qaeda, Jelani's forces. We're starting to see that, all kinds of rumbling that the Alawites have 160,000 men, militia, ready to fight back. I don't believe any of that. I mean, they had where were those 160,000 when 15,000 Al-Qaeda troops were overrunning the Syrian military that wasn't willing to fight just a year ago? I don't believe that, but I believe that they have more than they did before, right? That there will be some type of beginning fight back in Syria. Not that it would be effective, right? Certainly not in the short term, but you're going to see insurgency against the Al-Qaeda caliphate in Syria from both the Alawites and the Kurds this year.
Mark Sleboda, International Relations Security Analyst. You can find all of Mark's work on Boosty under Real Politics with Mark Sleboda, or if you just put Mark's name in, and that's Boosty. Mark, Happy New Year. Thank you for joining me. You be safe, man. Thank you for this.
Happy fucking New Year.
Have a good one. All right. We have come to the end of Mark's segment. Mark is